Welcome to the Sports Betting Podcast from pregame.com. This is Marco D'Angelo along with Vegas Runner. You may notice we have an empty chair here for the first segment. Normally our host, RJ Bell, is there. Rumor is he's out at the ATM. He has to get a little cash out of the ATM for a later segment in the podcast. So he'll be back with us soon.
A nickel to be exact.
Yeah, as soon as he gets back from the bank. But we're here. We're going to preview the Thursday night game. Big game, ACC, Florida State at North Carolina. As we do each and every week, we're going to go to the man with the lines. Vegas Runner, tell us about this line.
Okay, the odds makers and the wise guys had a little disagreement on what this number should be. Chris first opened the number up at a pick, and they immediately laid the pick on North Carolina. So when the other books within a half hour put out the lines for the following week, they opened it up at 2.5. North Carolina as a home favorite, and then over under 48. Today we're looking at still Carolina 2.5, and the total's 48.5.
Now, with that line being North Carolina, at 2.5, are you surprised that they're not giving any respect to Florida State?
What I did is I looked back to see what was the early line. In the summer when they put out lines for marquee games,
yes.
And I knew this is a Thursday night game, so they'd probably put out a future line on it. And they actually had North Carolina -3 back then. So
really?
Coming in, they didn't think this Florida State team was going to be that good. What's surprising, though, is that they're 2-4. Who would have thought they'd be that bad when their quarterback Ponder's having one of the best seasons? The guy's completing 68% of his passes. He's got 1,800 yards, 9 touchdowns, 1 interception. But the problem is teams have forced them to become one-dimensional because they can't run the ball. And it's easy to play defense if you know they're throwing, and you just keep them out of the end zone, let them kick threes, come downfield. And that's what's been the problem, I think.
Well, I'm surprised that, the line, sitting at 2.5. North Carolina's not a marquee team in the ACC.
Not at all.
They've been a good team, but they're not flashy.
No,
they fly under the radar. They play hard-nosed defense. And
Yates is like a 60% completion guy, 1,000-yard pass. They're not dazzling you. They're not pretty to watch.
Florida State, really, the season's unraveling for them. They're sitting at 2-4. You've got the Bobby Bowden future situation. Is he going to be back? He's already come out and said he wants to come back next year. There's a lot of talk that a lot of people at Florida State don't want him back. They've lost 3 games in a row, and what's amazing is the 3 games they lost in a row came immediately following their best game of the year.
Yeah.
They went to BYU. They put a beating on BYU at BYU, and BYU's got a very good ball club.
Yeah.
They got a big game
right
this
after
weekend.
BYU had beaten Oklahoma.
Absolutely. And they score 54 or something in that game.
Yeah.
Big total. What's happening with Florida State? It's tough. Now, one thing that over the history with Florida State, if you look at this game and you try to figure out, which way you want to go in this game, Florida State has always responded well off of 2 or more against the spread losses. They're 27-11 against the spread if they've lost 2 or more in a row to the spread coming into the game. So obviously you've got that situation. What are your thoughts on this game?
Bottom line, Florida State is 1-5 against the spread, so they're not getting it done. But what surprised me is when I went and did a little work is the last 3 games that they've lost coming into this Thursday night affair, they were favored in all 3.
Mm-hmm.
So they were surprised to lose. They weren't supposed to lose them games. 2 of them were at home as well. The only questions I have, and the reason I'm not jumping on North Carolina yet, is North Carolina started out well. They beat Connecticut. They beat East Carolina. Then all of a sudden, the wheels fell off, and they didn't just lose. They got blown out by 17 against Georgia Tech. Then they lost by 13 to Virginia. Then what happens is last Saturday they get to play Georgia Southern, which is a practice team, and they win 42-10. So my question is, where do they stand coming into this game?
Which team's going to show
exactly, up? That team that was doing well early in the season, or that team where the wheels just fell out before they played Georgia Southern? And that's the only question mark I have right now.
I haven't made up my mind yet, but I'm like you. I'm taking a look at the North Carolina side. when I do handicapping and a team has a couple losses like you just said, and then they get that win against a nobody school, I call that the buffer game. That's the game that
Getting
they
their
need.
confidence back, in boxing, the tomato can.
That's it.
Put someone in there, he could beat his ass.
So now they got their confidence back. But a lot of people, general public, and I like to use a term in handicapping, John Q. Public, the average guy that maybe just picks up the newspaper or looks at the logs on the teams, their schedule, and that they're going to look at this game, and one thing's going to stand out. They're going to look at Florida State and look at Florida State's last game. It was against Georgia Tech. They were in a 49-44 shootout. Now, anytime a team loses in a high-scoring game, the public is quick to excuse that loss because
whoever had the ball at the end won.
Right, and it was a situation where they looked good in losing. You've heard me use the phrase, teams that win ugly, I like to back because there's value with them. Well, here's a team that looked good in losing. So there's no value in a Florida State team that's coming off a loss. What makes it even worse is people are going to look at North Carolina and see that they also played Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech drilled them. Mm-hmm. So the average bettor is going to go, well, if Florida State can almost beat Georgia Tech in a 49-44 game, and North Carolina gets blown out by Georgia Tech, well, then Florida State should win. And it's that kind of thinking that Vegas loves. The squares coming in. So, I think the North Carolina side may be the side to look at. I'll have confirmation tomorrow. We'll see. I'm curious to see if this line takes any movement
to 3.
On game
That's
day.
The key. That's what most of us are waiting to see. Are they going to get it to that magic number? And then from there is when you got to make the decision.
Right. Or if it stays under the 3, then that's going to tell you that John Q. Public is sending enough in on Florida State, taking the attractive looking dog. And how good with this team, you've got North Carolina. They don't score a lot of points.
Yeah.
So if you're sitting there with Florida State plus 2.5 and everybody starts working their teasers for the weekend, how attractive does Florida State plus 9.5 look?
Sure.
So interesting ball game. Should be a good one to get the weekend kicked off on Thursday night ESPN football. Any closing thoughts?
No, bottom line here is Florida State's just an offensive team. They have terrible defense. Look at their rank: 107th in yards allowed, 106th in passing yards allowed, 90-something in rushing yards allowed. They're atrocious on defense. They're not just bad. And then you have Carolina, who's just one of the best defensive teams. I mean, they're number 1 in the country in passing yards allowed, number 3 in total yards allowed. So this defense is really strong. And it's, what do you like? You like offense or you like defense? I think that's what it's going to come down to tomorrow.
Well, we'll find out tomorrow night on ESPN. This has been the Sports Betting Podcast from pregame.com for the Thursday night edition. We'll be back with our regular podcast where we'll be previewing 5 games. And this is Marco D'Angelo along with Vegas Runner. We'll be right back.